So in this video, we're going to be covering AppGyver, which is a no-code platform that is very similar to Bubble, but it's built in its own way with its own unique strengths and weaknesses. And so in this video, I'm going to have an overall overview of how it works, what you can do with it, some features, some functionality, and then we're going to follow up and we're going to try to build a simple app later on. Okay, so this is going to be a fun video. All right, so here I am on the homepage of AppGyver.com, and this is basically a no-code platform that claims that you will never go back to coding seriously. The world's first professional no-code platform, enabling you to build apps for all form factors, including mobile, desktop, browser, TV, and others. And so on this front page, you can have a little bit of a tutorial, you can have a small overview, what it can do, build quality apps without compromise. There's a lot of functionality, a lot of things. You can also build it once and you can run it on multiple devices. So you can run it on the web, you can run it as a desktop app, you can run it as a mobile app on iOS and Android, and all of that is done after you build the app. So once you build it, you can run it on multiple platforms. And so before we go to the actual app designer and I actually show you how to build an app and the functionality of the UI and everything like that, it's worth noting that this platform is free for life, okay, for all indie developers and organizations with less than 10 million in revenue or funding. So this is a big difference from some of the other paid tools that charge a monthly fee, okay? So once you create an account, you're gonna be on a screen that looks like this, and you can create a new app, and I already have an app, okay? And so we're gonna go to one of my apps, and this is a very, very basic app. I don't have a lot, and I'm gonna delete all these things so that we can start right from the beginning, okay? So we're gonna have a blank screen here. And so the first thing that you probably notice is this left-hand pane, and this is this familiar pane. You probably have seen it in Bubble. You've seen it in other no-code platforms and UI designers, and this is a bunch of components here where you can essentially drag and drop and put them on here and do all kinds of interesting things with them. So I can drag and drop this title, and I can have this headline, or I can drag and drop this paragraph, and I can have some text there. And so we have these static fields. We have forms, we have layouts, we have lists, we have input fields as well. We have some primitives on the bottom, checkbox, dropbox, drop-down, input, slider, and toggle. And you can also go into the so-called component market, and you can find other components that other users of this platform have built. So for instance, this looks like a cool component. I can click on it. I can learn more about it, when was it created, who is the maintainer, and I can install it. I already have it installed, so I don't need to install it. But if I wanted to install something new, I can, for instance, maybe get this one. This is an icon button. I can click install, and that's going to install. So once I install it, it's going to appear here in this install tab. And I already have this component here, so I can drag and drop this custom component, and I have all of these extra fields that were built separately, that were built by somebody else, that did not come from Bubble. And so there's a lot of interesting functionality that are built to each of these components. For instance, if I drag and drop title, I can click on it, and in this right-hand pane, I have my properties and I have my style. So style doesn't really need a lot of explanation. This is your typical, styling, how it's set up, the dimension, the font, typography, background, transform, advanced properties. I would say this style functionality is pretty much the same in all of these tools. Maybe there's a couple of small differences. But what's interesting about it, if you go into properties, you can customize this field in very, very interesting ways. So for instance, if you click on it, so we have this content and we have repeat with, okay? And so if we go into content, we can bind this field to something else, to pretty much anything. Right now it's bound to a static value, but we can bind it to data and variables, to formula, component properties, lots of interesting things. And I'm going to be covering all of that later on in the video. And so there's lots of interesting things. If I drag, for instance, an image below it, I can specify the source. I can also do repeat. I can do interesting things. I also have some advanced properties as well. But before we talk about these components, it's worth noting that you have this feature this preview device option here. So right now it's set on the iPhone XR, XS Max, and all of this in 414 pixels. If I click on it, I can preview this on an iPad Pro. I can view how it looks. I can preview this on a web in full screen. I can preview this on a Nexus device. I can also preview this on a lot of other devices, or I can customize my own width as well. And so we're going to keep it here. Since that is what we're looking at, this 414 pixels, we can also change the zoom level and all of that thing. And so what's interesting about it is that once I click on the component, so for instance, let's delete this one. Let's say I want to do something with headline, okay? If I go in here, it says show logic for title. If I click on this button, it's going to show the logic. And this is where a lot of the logic happens, because you cannot really have an app without the logic. So for instance, if I click on it, I have an event here. This is component tap. And this event is fired whenever I tap on this component. So if I click on it or I tap on it with my mouse or with my finger, depending on the device, this event will be fired. So as an example, let's say I want to do something very, very simple. I want to show an alert. So what I do is I go to this left-hand core pane. I have core, I have by me, and I have installed. It's the same thing as this, except these are logic components. And I scroll down, and I'm going to drag and drop this alert. I drag it, and then I connect the tap to the alert. And then I click on the alert, and I can customize it. Okay, so I have optional inputs. I have advanced functionality. And for instance, this is going to be an alert, and this alert is going to do something. So we can go to outputs as well. It can output something. And for the purpose of this tutorial, we can have something very, very simple. So for instance, we can have a dialog box. It could be dialog title, could be something like hey. Once we type hey in there, you're going to see hey here as well. We also have some advanced functionality. We can have a custom name. We can have more inputs. We can have a dialog message. This is a dialog. This is an input. And then we have a dismiss button, an OK button, okay? And so now if I click on save and I preview this app, and let me show you how to preview this app. The way you want to preview this app is you go to this launch box here and you click on open app preview portal. Once you open it, it's gonna launch a whole new dashboard here, and you can click on your app, you can open it, and it's gonna launch the app. And here's the app. So if I hit this, I have my dialog box that pops up here, and I can dismiss it with the OK. But this is just the beginning. There's so many interesting things that you can do. You can also distribute the app. You can open build service. You can distribute it building standalone Mac OS, Android, iOS apps, all of these things that you can do. The supported options are currently as a standalone iOS and Android and a static deployed web app, okay? Now, you can do that. So if you want to go back to the screen, you just hit this X button here, this X circle here, and you're going to be back to the screen. And what we did is we basically built a sample app. We fire an event, and then we have a dialog box. And that is a very, very simple app. Obviously, we can build a lot more complicated apps depending on what we're trying to do. So let me show you a couple of other things. We also have this navigation pane where we can navigate. We can have the header bar, the navigation menu. We can configure it. We can click on it, and we can add an item to our navigation, to this header bar, to navigation. We can do we can enable it. We can do a lot of customization. What is really interesting about it is this data tab here. So if you go to this data tab, you can configure a data resource, okay? And what is a data resource? A data resource is essentially the source, the repository for the data in your app. So right now, if we go back to this app, all we have is the UI. This app is not storing data. It's not getting any data. It's not doing anything. So it would be a lot of fun to actually go out and have this app interact with something, okay? And so if you go into the data, you can add a data resource, and there's a lot of data resources that AppGyver supports. We have client-side storage, we have REST API, we have AppGyver Cloud Storage. This is for hobby use only. They tell you that this is suitable for a development environment. And we can also do a cloud integration or a marketplace search for some kind of other option. And a little bit later on, I'm going to show you how to do a REST API direct integration, which is A lot of fun, and it's really easy. We also have authentication here. You can enable authentication. Currently, the application has no authentication. Anybody can use the application without any restriction. And I'm going to be doing a future video where I'm going to be covering this in greater detail. We also have a theme here, which we can configure. We can edit theme with preview. We can add a new theme variable. We have fonts that this theme has. We can add the font file. There's a lot of customization, a lot of interesting things that we can use. Now, another really interesting piece of functionality that concerns AppGyver is the variables, okay? So if you go to the top menu, you have the view and you have the variables. You can toggle this and you're gonna have access to all these variables, okay? And so you have app variables, you have page variables, you have page parameters, data variables, and then translation variables. App variables are variables that are global to the app. So this could be a user that's logged in. This could be any kind of functionality that's global to the app. Page variables are local to the page. So maybe this could be specific things about that page that once you go to the next page or the page is offloaded, the variables are no longer active, okay? You have page parameters, and these are read-only argument values passed when navigating to a page. So when you are going from page 1 to page 2 to page 3, you're going to be passing around page parameters. Next, we have data variables. So data variables are variables that are tied to the underlying data. And this is a really, really interesting functionality because when we define a data source, maybe this is a REST API, like an external data source, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes, or it could be some other data source, maybe it's client-based or some kind of a database on the server. Then what you need to do is you need to define these data variables, and they're going to be bound to the data source, and then you're going to bind these data variables to the actual UI elements. And this makes it really, really easy. And I'm going to show exactly how to do that, okay? So now you can toggle this, and you're going to go back to the view screen, okay? And so right now, I want to go and build a sample app using a sample dummy JSON REST API data. And so if you go to this website called JSON Placeholder, you will find a really cool service that essentially gives you dummy data. And they can give you dummy posts, dummy comments, dummy albums, dummy photos, dummy to-dos, and dummy users. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make a sample app that displays posts. That's all it's going to do. It's just going to display a number of posts, maybe 5 posts, maybe 10 posts, depending. And so if we open this in the browser, you're going to see a bunch of posts. There's a lot of posts. There's 100 posts, it seems. And this is all dummy data. And so what we want to do is we want to build an app that displays a list of these posts right on the app. And so I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. And so the first thing that you need to do is you need to place the field that's going to be displaying this post. And so the first thing that you want to do is you want to drag and drop the specific fields that are going to be displaying the proper data. And so in this example, I'm going to be displaying the title of the post and the actual body. And it makes sense that the title is going to be title here, and the body is going to be the paragraph, okay? Now, before we go further, we actually need to define our data before we can actually use the data in our app. And so we're going to go into the data tab here. We're going to click on add data resource. We're going to choose REST API direct integration. We're going to call this resource. I'm just going to call it JSON. Just keep it simple. And there's a short description, JSON. And now we need the resource URL. And so we have this dummy resource, this dummy REST API service that we can use. And we can just copy this and go back to the app and paste it, okay? They're looking for the resource URL. And what is a resource URL? A resource URL is a URL that is the base. It's kind of like a base URL. So if it's posts, it's going to be posts. If it's comments, all of these are resource URLs. And then later on, when you want to get a specific post, or you want to get comments, or you want to modify a specific entity, whether it's a post or comments or something else, you have to add more stuff to the URL. You have to append the URL with specific post ID or comment ID or things like that. But in terms of the resource, it's the base URL. And this is exactly what AppGyver is asking. And so this is what we're going to paste here. And now we've configured it. This is enough, okay? So we can click save. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to configure the various methods. So we're going to configure two methods, okay? We're going to configure the get collection and the get record, okay? That way we can retrieve multiple records, but we can also retrieve one record if that's what we want, okay? And so once we click on this get collection, we are going to go back to this this fake JSON service, and we are going to copy this post here, and we're going to paste it here. Because for the post, we are done. Actually, we don't even need to copy anything. We are pretty much done. We don't need a key path. We do not need anything in this example. We are done. We can just click on save because it's simply the base URL. Now for the get record, we need to pass an ID. And in this example, it already has this ID. We're going to be passing the ID. And once we pass the ID, it's going to replace this token with the ID that we are passing. And we're going to double check. And as you can see, it has the same syntax. So if we click on post 1, we're going to get the post with an ID of 1. And the syntax is exactly how AppGyver set it up, is that post /post/1. And so we're going to go back in here. We don't really need to change anything. We do not. We have the placeholder here. We don't need to mess with this. We do not need to do anything at all. And this method is enabled. Get collection is enabled as well. And now we can test it. So I'm going to test get collection first. We're going to go to test, and I'm going to click on run test. And now I get a result, and I'm going to get 100 posts back, which is exactly what we expected. And so we can set schema from the response, and that way AppGyver knows what kind of response to expect. In this example, we are essentially getting an object with 4 fields: body, ID, title, and user ID. And this is exactly what our requests from the browser tell us, is that there are 4 fields, and this is what AppGyver configured to do. And so we have that. We're going to click on save. Always remember that it's not saving automatically. You have to keep hitting on save in order to save data. Next, we're going to go to get record, and we are going to test this as well. And so it's asking us for a parameter. We are going to retrieve a post with an ID of 1. So we're going to hit run test, and we get the proper result, which is exactly what this one is getting. This one right here. We are asking for post /1, and this is exactly what AppGyver is getting to us. So we're going to set schema from response as well. And now this specific request knows exactly what kind of data to expect. Same thing with get collection and get record. Now we can also configure the other 3, namely create record, update record, and delete record. But I'm going to be doing this in one of the future videos where I'm going to be building a full-featured app using this platform. And for the purpose of this tutorial, this is enough just to get us started, okay? So we are pretty much done. We have the base, we have the get collection, we have the get record. Now, before we can actually use the right data and to display the actual post information, we need to define the proper variables that are bound to the data that we already defined using the REST API configuration. So we're going to go into variables here. We're going to go into data variables, and we are going to add a variable. We're going to use this JSON here, and we're going to click on it. And in this example, we are going to be doing a single data record. So we're going to have a single data record. It's asking for an ID, okay? And this ID is obviously, it could be supplied while, inside the app. It could be done that. This is required. Now, before we hit save, we need to call this data variable. So I'm going to call this single post single. Now we have a data variable that's retrieving a single data record. So I'm going to hit save, and now I'm going to create another variable that's going to retrieve a collection of data in case we want to actually display a number of posts as well. And so I'm going to add the new data variable of the JSON type. We're going to go here, and we are going to call it post multiple. And this is a collection of data records. We're going to hit save. And now we have 2 data variables that are properly tied to the data source. But before we can actually run this app, we need to make sure that it's actually retrieving the right post. And so for that, we're going to go into variables. We're going to go into data variables. We're going to go to post single. and we are going to specify a value here. So we're going to go in here, we're going to do a static text, and the ID is 1. Obviously, you can bind this to anything else. This could be bound to another variable, maybe a page variable, maybe something else. But right now, we're just going to keep it simple, and we're going to specify it manually. So the idea is that this single data record is going to retrieve a post with an ID of 1. We're going to hit save. We're going to go back to the view, and we are going to preview our app to see if it's indeed displaying the first post. So we're going to click on Open App Preview Portal. We're going to open our app, and we are going to see. And as you can see, it is getting that post data, because if we go back to our sample API, we have this post here, this Latin here, and then we have this one here. Okay, and if we go back, you're going to see that this is indeed getting the right data here. And right now, I want to show you how you can configure an app to display multiple posts, because that is a little bit more involved. So we're going to go back to the view, and now we're going to configure it to get multiple posts. And so for that, you're going to change how it's set up. Okay, you're going to click on repeat with, you're going to choose on that, and you're going to go back to data. You're going to go into data variable, but now we're going to post multiple instead of post single. We're going to choose post multiple. We're going to choose that. We're going to hit save. And as you can see right away, it shows something that's a little bit grayed out. And this means it's repeating this data. So we have single title, but we're repeating it now, okay? And we can do the same thing for body as well. We are going to click on repeat with. We're going to go data variables, post multiple, and we have the body here. And as you can see, it's repeating the data for the body as well. So we're going to hit save. We are going to go back to our, we're going to go to the launch. We are going to open the preview portal, and we are going to preview the app. And now we should see multiple posts. So now we have multiple titles as well as multiple bodies. Okay, and obviously this is not what we want. We want it to be together. We want the title with the body together. At least that is something that I want. And I also do not want to display all 100 posts. I actually want to limit it. Maybe I want to display 5 posts per page. I want to fix it up. Maybe I want to display some extra data as well. And all of that can be easily done in the AppGyver no-code platform. And that is going to be a topic for one of the future videos, where I'm going to be building a real app with a lot of the functionality that I talked about today. So this is it for today's video. I really hope you've gotten value here. Let me know below in the comments if you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about this new, at least to me, no-code platform. Let me know if you're planning to play around with it. If you like this video, smash the like button, leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought about it. Let me know if you have any questions. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This channel is all about no-code tools, how to build any app in the world without writing a single line of code. And so I want to thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.